All right, so we've got this scene breakdown for Sneaky Verse, the Regretful Link, and wow, the title alone, kind of hints at a lot about modern relationships. What jumps out at you right away?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The whole sneaky link thing, it kind of implies like this imbalance, right? This lack of, I don't know, honesty maybe. And that's ripe for misunderstandings, which seems to be where this whole episode is going.
Yeah, totally. I mean, usually when we talk about sneaky links, we're talking casual, like
Hmm.
keeping it on the down low, and there's this assumption that both people are on the same page. But as we see with Ken, the main guy here, the morning after it can bring a whole wave of complications.
And the way they describe the scene, it's all about Ken's instant regret. He wakes up in this girl's apartment, girl one, and he's like, man, what did I do? That was rough. It's like the reality of it all hits him at once.
That feeling of, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? It's something probably a lot of people can relate to. But instead of, talking to her, his gut reaction is to bolt.
Literally, yeah. He starts deleting his contact info off her phone, mumbling to himself, delete, delete, there we go. I'm not hearing from you ever again. It's almost funny, but also kind of messed up, you know? Like, he just wants to erase he was ever there, ghost her before she's even awake.
You just hit on something huge there.
Yeah.
Ghosting. It's become so, I don't know, normal in this hookup culture.
Yeah.
Disappear, no explanation, no closure. Ken's actions are played for laughs here, but you have to wonder how it hits the other person.
Exactly. And the episode gets into that when girl one wakes up and catches him trying to sneak out. She confronts him, wants to know what's going on, but instead of like self-awareness from Ken, it just makes things worse.
It's interesting, right? Because him trying to escape,
Hmm.
it speaks volumes. He's not just ducking an awkward chat. He's trying to avoid any responsibility. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't want to acknowledge that this encounter, it might have an effect on her emotionally.
Totally. And that avoidance, that lack of talking it out, that's at the heart of so many problems in these situations. You have the physical intimacy, but zero emotional connection, zero responsibility.
It's like by, deleting his number, sneaking out, it's Ken trying to pretend the whole thing never happened. And that's where things take a darker turn, don't they? She stands up to him, and he actually pushes her aside to get away.
Huge turning point in the episode. It goes from like, ha ha, funny to something serious, kind of scary even. Suddenly you see how easily a casual thing can become coercive, even violent, when one person thinks they can just ignore the other person's boundaries, that they can just say no to her having a say in this.
It's this stark reminder that physical stuff, no matter how casual, it has the potential to escalate, especially when you've got a power imbalance
Yeah.
or just bad communication, lack of respect. And it's wild how they use this one scenario, this sneaky link, to talk about these bigger societal things, consent, communication, the whole mess of modern dating.
And by putting it in this, what's supposed to be a lighthearted show like Sneakyverse, it makes you do a double take. Like, wait a minute, am I off base with some of my own assumptions here? It makes you think twice.
For sure. It's one thing to laugh at Ken's, ridiculousness, but then you see the potential fallout for both of them. It
Yeah.
makes you think about ghosting, about how we treat each other, even casually. Like, we have a responsibility to be decent, to communicate, so we avoid these crappy situations.
And what about girl one in all of this? We focus so much on Ken and his regret, but how does this hit her emotionally? How does this impact her next relationship, her ability to trust people?
That's such a good point, and I am very curious to see how they show her side of the story as this unfolds. And the way they show him getting away, it's not just like, oh, he slips out the door. It's like he's fleeing the scene, almost like he's running from his own guilt.
Yeah, and even when he's out, he checks his phone, like double checking he really deleted his number from her phone. And that sigh of relief, it's like that's what he cares about most. Not, what he did or how she's feeling, but just covering his own butt.
Totally focused on saving himself. And that kind of leads into his little pep talk to himself, doesn't it? That whole, man, never again. That was too much. Got to be smarter with these links.
That line right there, that's everything. He's talking about being smarter about his links, not about like being a better person, treating someone with respect. It really makes you wonder, did he actually learn anything from this about consent, about just basic decency?
Like he sees it as a game he almost lost, not, a chance for a connection, however brief. And that ending, man, talk about leaving you hanging. That sneaky verse logo popping up as everything fades to black.
It's brilliant though, right? Because it doesn't give you any easy answers. It's like, is this a wake-up call for Ken? Or is he just gonna keep doing this? Who knows?
Like the whole episode is this mirror, right?
Yeah.
It's reflecting back at us some of the worst parts of how we date now. Ghosting, casual hookups, being terrified of being vulnerable. Makes you question your own behavior a bit.
Totally. And by taking it to this kind of unsettling place, it forces you to think about the consequences. I mean, we see it with girl one. She's confused, then angry, then kind of just shocked. But think about the long-term emotional impact on her. The episode doesn't spell it out, but it's there.
That's what gets me, how it handles her side of things. We see her initial reaction, but it makes you realize she's dealing with this long after he's gone. He walks away physically, but she doesn't get that luxury, does she?
It's easy to forget, right?
Yeah.
Casual doesn't mean consequence-free. And usually, let's be real, it's women left holding the bag emotionally in these situations. They're judged differently, held to different standards.
You're so right. And even though the episode focuses mostly on Ken, it does hint at all these bigger issues: consent, respect, how we communicate or don't. The power dynamics that can get so messed up, even in just a casual thing. So much to think about in, what, 8 minutes? It really is something how this episode takes this like sneaky link thing and it kind of blows up these bigger ideas about relationships.
Right. This whole thing about casual encounters being consequence-free, I don't know, this episode really throws that back in your face. Ken's like desperate to just make it all go away, pretend it never happened.
Yeah, and that's so common now, isn't it? In hookup culture, I mean.
Yeah.
It's like deleting his number, it's deleting the memory for him. No need to be responsible.
And it makes you think, like, we can't just erase other people's experiences, can we? Just because it was casual. Girl one, she deserves to be respected, to be valued, and he just completely throws that out the window.
Makes you think about all the messages we've gotten about casual sex, about dating. It's like all these unspoken rules
Yeah.
that just set everyone up for these misunderstandings, getting hurt, even dangerous situations, you know?
Exactly. And it's in those gray areas where communication is bad, where consent's not clear, that's when things can go really wrong. And we see it, right? When she confronts him, he gets physical. Like, force is the only way he can think of to get control, to get out of there without facing the music.
That moment, it's like all pretense is gone. No more playing it for laughs. Suddenly, it's real. How quickly something casual can turn coercive, even violent. When one person just decides the other person's boundaries, their right to say no don't matter.
And we can't forget these power dynamics, these communication breakdowns, they don't just come out of nowhere. They come from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Society, how we view gender, sexuality, relationships, all of it plays into this.
Makes you think bigger picture.
Yeah.
How do we as a society, I don't know, even start to deal with consent, with respect, with communication? And not just in hookups, but everywhere.
And that open ending, right? He walks away seemingly fine, and we don't even know the full impact on her. It's like the episode saying, we're not done here, this conversation isn't over.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive into this sneaky verse episode.
Yeah.
And I think if we take anything away from it, it's got to be this. How do we make sure in every interaction, big or small, that there's that foundation of respect, of communicating clearly, of really understanding what consent means?
Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter if it's a sneaky link or a long-term thing. Everyone deserves to walk away feeling, good about it. Respected, valued, not used, and tossed aside.
Absolutely. Sneaky verse, or the real world, our actions have consequences. And those consequences, they
That's
matter.
where